Hello everyone, welcome to Study with Sri. Here I am covering Environment by Shankar IAS Academy. So in this video I will cover the chapter 1, that is Ecology and Environment. So here in chapter 1, first topic is ecology. So ecology derived from two words. First is oikos, meaning home or place to live in, and logos, meaning study. So literally it is the study of the home of nature. Now ecology is defined as a scientific study of relationship of living organism with each other and with their environment. So ecology is defined as a scientific study of relationship of living organism with each other and with their environment. Now ecology deals with the ways in which organisms are molded by their environment. Okay, so ecology deals with the ways in which organisms are molded by their environment, how they make use of environmental resources including energy flow and mineral cycling. Now moving forward to the history of ecology. So the roots of ecology lie in the natural history, which is as old as human civilization itself. Since early history, man has indulged in ecology in a practical sort of way, knowingly and unknowingly. In primitive societies, that is, in ancient societies, every individual was required to have an intimate knowledge of his environment for their survival. That is about the forces of nature and plants and animals around him or her. So, in ancient history, we know that the technology and science was not so developed, so they always depend on the nature. So they had great knowledge about the ecology. Our ancient Indian texts have reference to ecological principles. The classical texts of Vedic period, such as Vedas, Samhitas, Brahmanas, Aranyakya and Upanishad, contain many references to ecological concepts. Now, the Indian treatise on medicine, the Charaka Samhita, the surgical text Sushruta Samhita, shows that people during this period had a good understanding of plant and animal ecology. So, we know that in ancient time, people depend upon the herbs. So, these texts contain classification of animals on basis of habitat and habitat land in terms of nature of soil, climate and vegetation, description of plants typical to various localities. Charaka Samhita contains information that air, land, water, seasons were indispensable for life, that polluted air and water are injurious to health. So next topic is environment and its composition. So everything that surrounds or affects an organism during its life is collectively known as its environment. So everything that surrounds or affects an organism during its lifetime is known as environment. Now, the environment is defined as the sum total of living and non-living components, influences and events surrounding an organism. So, the environment is defined as the sum total of total living and non-living components, influence and events surrounding an organism. सो हम लोग के आसपास में जितना भी कुछ है लिविंग नॉन लिविंग every creatures are included in environment. So all organism from virus to man are obligated to depend on their other organism, right? So all organism dependent on other organism and environment for food, energy, water, oxygen, shelter and for other needs. So the relationship and interaction between organism and environment are highly complex. It comprises both living means biotic, and non-living components. we know that our environment is dynamic. So the environment is not static. Both biotic and abiotic factors are in flux and keeps changing continuously. Now, what are components of environment? We know that components of environment is divided in as biotic and abiotic components. So abiotic components which has no life, like energy, radiation, temperature and heat flow, water, atmospheric gases and winds, fire, gravity, topography, soil, geological substratum. So everything are that have no life are the abiotic components. Okay, like energy, radiation, temperature, water, atmospheric gases, fire, gravity, topography, soil and geological substratum. And everything that has life is biotic components, like green plants, non-green plants, decomposer, parasites, symbionts, animals, man. Okay. Next, for instance, let's take a environment of a fish in the pond. So fish एक pond में है, so it एक in external environment of fish है और एक internal environment of fish है. External environment includes that its environment consists of abiotic components such as light, temperature, including the water in which nutrients, oxygen, other gases and organic matters are dissolved, right? So external components includes the abiotic component, light, temperature, water. ठीक है? The biotic environment consists of microscopic organism called plankton, which it assume, as well as aquatic plants, animals and decomposer. So biotic environment consists of microscopic organism called as plankton. Now the internal environment of fish is, it is enclosed by outer body of surface. First is, it is enclosed by outer body of surface. The internal environment is relatively stable as compared to external environment. However, it is not absolutely constant. Injury, illness, excessive stress upsets the internal environment. For example, if a marine fish is transferred to freshwater environment, then it will not able to survive. Now moving forward to the levels of organisms in ecology. So there are mainly 6 levels, which 6 levels are: first individual, second population, third community, fourth ecosystem, fifth biome and sixth biosphere. So you can remember as IPC, EBB. Okay, IPC, Indian Penal Code, EBB. Okay, I for individual, P for population, C for community, E for ecosystem, B for biome and B for biosphere. Now I will cover one by one. First topic is individual. Organism is an individual living being that has the ability to act or function independently. So which organism has ability to act or function independently are the individual being. Now it may be plant, animal, bacteria, fungi, etc. And its body made up of organs, organelles or other parts that work together to carry out on various processes of life. These are individual. Now population. Population is a group of organisms that usually of the same species. Very important. If we count the population, then we count the population of human beings separately, the population of tiger separately. So population is a group of organisms usually of the same species occupying a defined area during the specific time. Now population growth rate is the percentage variation between the number of individuals in a population at the two different times. So two different time में जो परसेंटेज वेरिएशन हो रहा है नंबर ऑफ इंडिविजुअल का, दैट इज द पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ. देयरफॉर पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ रेट कैन बी पॉजिटिव और नेगेटिव. सो इंक्रीज भी हो सकता है, डिक्रीज भी हो सकता है. सो द मेन फैक्टर make population increase are birth and immigration. This immigration starts from I, and the main factors make population decrease is death or immigration. Now how could you remember the immigration and immigration? These are so confusing. So D के बाद क्या आता है? E. So if you remember one, then automatically second वाला याद हो जाएगा, right? So death or and immigration and birth or immigration. The main limiting factors for the growth of population are abiotic and biotic component, right? So limiting factor जो है population का growth में जो limit कर रहा है वो can be classified as biotic or abiotic factors. Now what is population density? Population density is the relation between the number of individuals in a population and the area they occupy. Population density is the relation between the number of individuals of a population and the area they occupy. ठीक है, पॉपुलेशन डेंसिटी में अगर कोई एरिया है 10 एकड़ का एंड उसमें 100 पीपल रह रहा है तो एंड अनदर एरिया 10 एकड़ उसमें 200 पीपल रह रहा है तो सेकेंड एरिया जो है वो पॉपुलेशन डेंसिटी उसका हाई है, राइट. नेक्स्ट इज कम्युनिटी. इफ वी लुक अराउंड आवरसेल्फ वी विल नोटिस दैट population of plants and animals seldom occur by themselves. The reason for this is quite obvious. In order to survive, individuals of any one species depend on individuals of different species with which they actively interact in several ways. Right? So, if we look around ourselves, we will notice that population of plants and animals seldom occur by themselves. The reason for this is quite obvious. In order to survive, individuals of one species depend on individuals of different species with which they actively interact in several ways. For example, animals require plants for food and trees for shelters. Plants requires animal for pollination, seed dispersal and soil microorganism to facilitate the nutrient supply. So we are dependent on each other. Like animal depends on plants for food and trees for shelter. Same way plants also depends on animals for pollination, seed dispersal. ठीक है? Next, communities is the most instance are named after the dominant plant form or species. So communities is the most instances are named after the dominant plant form. For example, a grassland community is dominated by grasses. Though it may contain herbs, shrubs and trees along with associated animals of different species. So जो डोमिनेटिंग प्लांट फॉर्म रहेगा उसके हिसाब से कम्युनिटी का नेम होगा. लाइक ग्रासलैंड कम्युनिटी. सो ग्रासलैंड कम्युनिटी पे बस ग्रास है क्या? बाकी भी तो हर्ब, श्रब्स एंड ट्रीज भी है, बट डोमिनेटिंग फैक्टर्स इज ग्रासेस. सो this is called as grassland community. A community is not fixed or rigid. Communities may be large or small. Very important that a community is not fixed or rigid. Communities may be large or small. Now one important fact is the skies over North India are seasonally filled with a thick soup of aerosol particle all along the southern edge of Himalayas, Bangladesh and Bay of Bengal. NASA research findings. So this topic do you know? You can read for some facts. So now moving forward to the types of community. On the basis of size and degree of relative independence, communities may be divided into two types. So, basis of size and degree of relative independence. First is major communities and second is minor communities. Now, what is major community? These are large sized, well organized and relatively independent. Okay, three features are there: large sized, well organized and relatively independent. They depend only on the sun's energy from outside and are independent of the inputs and outputs from adjacent communities. Example are tropical evergreen forest in northeast. So they depend only on the sun's energy. Now what are minor communities? These are dependent on neighboring communities. ठीक है? And are often called as societies. So these are dependent on neighboring communities and are often called as societies. They are secondary aggregation within a major community. Okay, they are secondary aggregations within a major community and are not therefore completely independent units. So they are not completely independent units as far as energy and nutrient dynamics are concerned. Like example are a mat of lichen on a cow dung pad. Very important. So mat of lichen is dependent on the cow dung pad. Okay? Next is the structure of a community. So in a community, the number of species and size of their population vary greatly. So in a community, the number of species and size of their population vary greatly. A community may have one or several species. The environmental factors determine the characteristics the community as well as the pattern of organization of the members in community. So the environmental factors determine the characteristic of the community. Very important that environmental factors determine the characteristics of the community as well as the pattern of organization of the members of the community. The characteristics pattern of a community is termed as the structure, which is reflected in the roles played by various populations, their ranges, and the type of area they inhabit, the diversity of species in a community, and the spectrum of interaction between them. So, the characteristics pattern of the community is termed as the structure, which is reflected in the roles played by various populations, their range, the type of area they inhabit, the diversity of species in community and the spectrum of interaction between them. Now what is ecosystem? An ecosystem is defined as a structural and functional unit of a biosphere consisting of community of living beings and the physical environment both interacting and exchanging materials between them. Very important that ecosystem is defined as a structural and functional unit, okay, of biosphere consisting of community of living beings and the physical environment both interacting and exchanging materials between them. It includes plants, trees, animal, fish, birds, microorganism, water, soil and people. So these includes plant, trees, animals, fish, birds, microorganism, water, soil and people. Again I am saying the definition of ecosystem. So an ecosystem is defined as a structural and functional unit. Okay, an ecosystem is defined as a structural and functional unit of biosphere consisting a community of living beings and the physical environment both interacting and exchanging material between them. Now it includes plant, tree, animal, fish, birds, microorganism, water, soil and the people. Now ecosystem vary greatly in size and elements, but each is a functioning unit of nature. So the ecosystem vary greatly in size and elements, but each is a functioning unit of nature. ठीक है, ecosystem vary करता है, but each is a functioning unit of nature. Now everything that lives in an ecosystem is dependent on other species. Very important that everything that lives in an ecosystem is dependent on the other species and elements that are also part of ecological community. If one part of an ecosystem is damaged or disappears, it has an impact on everything else. If one part of an ecosystem is damaged or disappear, it has an impact on everything else. Now, when an ecosystem is healthy, that is sustainable, it means that all the elements live in the balance and are capable of reproducing themselves. So when the ecosystem is healthy, जब ecosystem healthy हो जाएगा and sustainable, that is sustainable, means that all the elements live in balance. So इसके मतलब है कि जितना भी elements है, they live in balance and are capable of reproducing themselves. Ecosystem can be as small as a single tree and as large as entire forest. By an example, we will understand the difference between ecology, environment and ecosystem. For example, let us take the Shankar IAS Academy and its students. Let's say the ecology would be the scientific study of students' relationship with Shankar IAS Academy as a whole. So ecology is the scientific study of student and the academy. ठीक है, और जो academy है शंकर IAS Academy, being the environment in which student studies and the set of circumstances surrounding the students, in which environment would be teacher, books and other students etc. are said to be ecosystem. Now moving forward to the components of ecosystem. So the component of ecosystem and environment are the same. Abiotic component. So details of abiotic components are the inorganic and non-living parts of the world. We all know that abiotic component means inorganic or non-living parts of the world. Now abiotic part consists of soil, water, air, light, energy. Now it involves the chemicals like oxygen, nitrogen, etc. Physical processes include volcanoes, earthquakes, floods, forest fires, climates, weather condition, etc. Abiotic factors are the most important determinants of where and how well an organism exists in its environment. Although these factors interact with each other, one single factor can limit the range of an organism. So abiotic factors are very important and one single factor can limit the range of organism. First factor is energy. Energy from the sun is essential for maintenance of life. In case of plants, the sun directly supplies the necessary energy. Since animals cannot use solar energy directly, they obtain indirectly by eating plants and animals or both. Energy determines the distribution of organism in the environment, right? So energy from the sun is essential for maintenance of life. In case of plants, sun directly supplies the necessary energy to the plants, right? And animals cannot use the solar energy directly, they obtain it from indirectly by the eating plants and animals or both. Next is rainfall. Water is essential for all living beings. Majority of biochemical reactions take place in an aqueous medium. Water helps to regulate body temperature. Further, water bodies forms the habitat for many aquatic plants and animals. Next, temperature. Temperature is a critical factor for the environment which greatly influence survival of organism. Organism can tolerate only a certain range of temperature and humidity. Next, atmosphere. The Earth's atmosphere is responsible for creating conditions suitable for the existing of healthy biosphere of this planet. Next is substratum. Land is covered by soil and a wide variety of microbes. Protozoa, fungi and small animals, invertebrates thrive in it. Okay, so land is covered by soil and a wide variety of microbes, protozoa, fungi, small animals like invertebrates thrive in it. Okay, roots of the plant pierce through the soil to absorb water and nutrients. Okay, the organism can be terrestrial or aquatic. Terrestrial animals live on land. Aquatic plants, animals, microbes live in fresh water as well as the sea. Some microbes live in even hot water vents under the sea. ठीक है? So terrestrial animals live on land and aquatic plants, animals, microbes live in fresh water as well as the sea. Now material. So organic compounds such as protein, carbohydrate, lipid, humic substance are from inorganic compounds on decomposition. So organic compound जो है like protein, carbohydrate, lipid, human substance are formed from inorganic compound on decomposition. Okay, they are the combination of inorganic compound. Now inorganic compounds such as carbon dioxide, water, sulfur, nitrates, phosphates and ions of various metals are essential for organism to survive. Now the latitude and the altitude. So latitude has a strong influence on an area's temperature, resulting in change of climate such as polar, tropical and temperature. We know that latitude high जितना होगा उतना temperature decrease होगा. That is called as normal lapse rate. So latitude has a strong influence on an area's temperature, resulting in change of climates such as tropical, polar and temperate. Okay, these climate determine different natural biomes. From sea level to highest peak, wildlife is influenced by altitude. Okay, from sea level to highest peak, the wildlife is influenced by the altitude. As the altitude increases, the air become colder and drier, affecting the wildlife accordingly. Okay, altitude जितना increase होगा, air उतना colder and drier होगा, which affect the wildlife accordingly. Now moving forward to the biotic components. Biotic components include living organisms comprising plants, animals, microbes and are classified according to their functional attributes into producer and consumer. So these are, first is primary producer, that is called as autotrophs or self-nourishing. So primary producer are basically green plants and certain bacteria and algae. Very important. First is autotrophs. Primary producers are called as autotrophs, which are self-nourishing. Primary producers are basically green plants and certain bacteria and algae. They synthesize carbohydrate from simple inorganic raw materials like carbon dioxide and water in the presence of sunlight by the process of photosynthesis for themselves and supply indirectly to other non-producer. We know that carbohydrate is the product of the photosynthesis. So in photosynthesis, tree uses carbon dioxide, water, that are simple inorganic raw material, and in the presence of sunlight it produces the carbohydrate, that is a compound element. Now in terrestrial ecosystem, that is in land ecosystem, producers are basically herbaceous and woody plant, while in aquatic ecosystem producers are various species and microscopic algae. Now moving towards the consumers, that is heterotrophs or phagotrophs, other nourishing. First we read the primary producer, that is autotrophs. Next is consumers, that is heterotrophs, or phagotrophs, other nourishing. Consumers are incapable of producing their own food. That is, they cannot produce their own food and they cannot perform the function of photosynthesis. They depend on organic food derived from plants, animals, or both. So, they depend on the organic food derived from plants, animals, both. Consumers can be divided into two broad groups, namely micro and macro consumers. So, what are macro consumers? So, macro consumer feed on plants or animals or both and are categorized on the basis of their food sources. So, macro consumer feed on plants or animals or both and are categorized on the basis of their food resources. Herbivores are primary consumers which feed mainly on plants, that is cow, rabbit. ठीक है, herbivores क्या है? Herbivores are the primary consumers which feed mainly on plants, जो बस plant को खाता है. ठीक है, like cow, rabbit. Secondary consumers feed on primary consumers and secondary consumer feed करता है on primary consumer. Example, wolves. Now carnivores which feed on secondary consumers are called tertiary consumers, like lions which can eat wolves. ठीक है, omnivores are organisms which consume both plant and animal, like man and monkey. ठीक है, next is micro consumers or saprotrophs. ठीक है, ये नेम बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, saprotrophs. Decomposers or osmotrophs, very important. Micro consumers are called as saprotrophs, decomposers or osmotrophs. They are bacteria and fungi which obtain energy and nutrients by decomposing dead organic substances, detritus of plant and animal origin. So these are bacteria and fungi which obtain energy and nutrients by decomposing dead organic substances, detritus of plant and animal in origin. The products of decomposition, such as inorganic nutrients which are released in ecosystem, are reused by producer and thus recycled. So the products of decomposition, such as inorganic nutrients which are released in the ecosystem, are reused by producer and thus recycled. Earthworm and certain soil organisms such as nematodes and arthropods are the detritus feeders, help in decomposition of organic matter and are called as detrivores. Again I am saying that they are, that is micro consumers, that is saprotrophs, decomposer or osmotrophs, are the bacteria and the fungi. First, they are bacteria and fungi which obtain their energy and nutrients by decomposing dead organic substances. Okay, microorganisms obtain their nutrients by decomposing the dead organic substance, that is detritus of plant and animal origin. They produce of decomposition such as inorganic nutrients which are released in ecosystem, are reused by producer and thus recycled. So the product of decomposition such as inorganic nutrients which are released in an ecosystem are reused by the producer and thus recycled. Earthworm and certain soil organisms such as nematodes, arthropods are detritus feeder and help in decomposing the organic matter and are called as detrivores. Clear? Next is classification of ecosystem. So natural ecosystem is divided into two parts, terrestrial, that is land, and aquatic, that is the water. So terrestrial ecosystem consists of forest, grassland and desert, and aquatic system is consist of fresh water, saline water and marine water. Okay, so the detailed study of ecosystem will be dealt in subsequent chapter. So आगे chapter में हम लोग detailed study करेंगे. Now ecosystem are capable of maintaining their state of equilibrium. They can regulate their own species structure and functional processes. This capacity of ecosystem of self-regulation is known as homeostasis. Homeostasis is the capacity of ecosystem of self-regulation. ठीक है, capacity of ecosystem of self-regulation. So ecosystem are capable of maintaining their state of equilibrium. ठीक है, so they can regulate their own species structure and functional process. Now, what are goods and services provided by ecosystem? Okay. So goods and services provided by ecosystem include first, provision of food, fuel and fiber. Provision of food, fuel and fiber. Second, provision of shelter and building materials. Provision of shelter and building materials. Third, purification of air and water. Fourth, detoxification and decomposition of wastes. Fifth, stabilization and modernization of Earth's climate. Sixth, moderation of floods, droughts, temperature, extremes and forces of wind. Then, generation and renewal of soil fertility, including nutrient cycling. And then, pollination of plants, including many crops, control of pest and disease. Then, maintenance and genetic resources as key input to crop varieties and livestock breeds, medicine and other products. Next, cultural and aesthetic benefits. These are the goods and services provide. Now, what is ecotone? Very important. So, ecotone is a zone of junction between two or more diverse ecosystem. So, zone of junction between the two or more diverse ecosystem are called as ecotone. For example, the mangrove forest represent an ecotone between the marine and terrestrial ecosystem. Other examples are grassland, estuary and river bank. Okay, so ecotone is a zone of junction between two or more diverse ecosystem. For example, mangrove forest represent an ecotone between marine and terrestrial ecosystem. Other example are grassland, estuary and river bank. Okay, so here you can see that this is land ecosystem, this is aquatic ecosystem and the transitional ecosystem, that is zone of junction, is the mangrove. Okay, this is the ecotone. So ecosystem 1 and ecosystem 2, and combination of ecosystem 1 and ecosystem 2 is ecotone, that is marshland. So again I am saying that ecotone is the zone of junction between two or more diverse ecosystem. For example, mangrove forest represent an ecotone between marine and terrestrial ecosystem. Okay? Other examples are grassland, estuaries and river banks. Now, what is characteristics of ecotone? So it may be very narrow or quite wide. Okay? Ecotone may be very narrow or quite wide. It has the condition intermediate to the adjacent ecosystem. It has the condition intermediate to the adjacent ecosystem. Hence, it is a zone of tension. Okay? So, second is it has a condition of intermediate. So, we know that zone 1 and zone 2 and the intermediate is this ecotone. So, it has a condition of intermediate to the adjacent ecosystem. Hence, it is a zone of tension. Next, it is linear as it shows progressive increase in species composition of one incoming community and a simultaneous decrease in species of the other outgoing adjoining community. So, it is a linear as it shows progressive increase in species composition of one coming community and simultaneous decrease in species of other outgoing and adjoining community. So it is linear. A well-developed ecotone contains some organisms which are entirely different from that of adjoining communities. Okay, a well-developed ecotone contains some organisms which are entirely different from that of adjoining communities. Sometimes the number of species and the population density of some of species is much greater in this zone than either community. This is called the age effect. So sometimes the number of species and the population density of some of the species is much greater in this zone than either community. This is called as age effect. ठीक है? So age effect is sometimes the number of species का जो number है and the population density जो है of some species is much greater in this zone than either community. This is called as age effect. The organism which occur primarily or most abundantly in this zone are known as age species. So जिस organism का dominance रहेगा, this is called as age species. In the terrestrial ecosystem, age effect is especially applicable to birds. Okay, the organism which occur primarily or most abundantly in this zone are called as age species. And in terrestrial ecosystem, age effect is especially applicable to birds. For example, the density of birds is greater in the mixed habitat of ecotone between forest and desert. ठीक है? For example, the density of bird is greater in the mixed habitat of ecotone between the forest and desert. Now, niche. What is niche? A niche is the unique functional role or place of a species in an ecosystem. Very important that a niche is the unique functional role and place of species in an ecosystem. So you can remember niche as functional role. So functional role of every community is unique. So niche is the unique functional role or place of species in an ecosystem. ठीक है? So it is a description of all the biological, then physical and chemical factors that a species need to survive, stay healthy and reproduce. So it is a biological, physical and chemical factors combination that a species needs to survive, stay healthy and reproduce. ठीक है? तो a niche is unique for a species, which means that no two species have exact identical niche. Very important. Niche is the functional role which is unique to every species. A niche is unique to every species means no two species have exact identical niche. Niche plays an important role in conservation of organism. So niche plays an important role in conservation of organism. If we have to conserve species in its native habitat, we should have knowledge about the niche requirements of the species and should ensure that all requirements of its niche are fulfilled. Now, types of niche. Habitat niche. Habitat niche means where it lives, where a species lives. It is identical between the two species. ठीक है? So habitat niche is where it lives. Food niche is what it eats or decomposes and what species it competes with. Now reproductive niche means how and when it reproduces. Physical and chemical niche is temperature, land shape, land slope, humidity and other requirement. Now two schemes, namely Nagar Vana Udyan Yojana and School Nursery Yojana, have been launched. Nagar Vana Udyan Yojana aims to create at least one city forest in each city with minimum area of 25 hectares. The scheme aims at creation of city forest in forest areas within their jurisdiction up to maximum 100 hectare and minimum area of 20 hectare. The objective of Yojana is to create 200 city forests in the country. The School Nursery Yojana aims to build a lasting bond of students with nature. So moving towards the biome. So here is a pyramid based on the precipitation and the temperature. In x-axis there is precipitation mentioned and y-axis there is temperature mentioned. So very dry and very warm is warm desert. Then tropical grassland consists of dry and warm. Then savanna is moderate dry and very warm. Tropical deciduous forest is wet and warm, and tropical rainforest is very wet and warm. Then moving upward, cold desert is cold and dry. Prairie is cold and moderate dry. Temperate deciduous forest is wet and moderate warm. Then boreal forest is cold. Then tundra is colder and polar is more colder. The terrestrial part of the biosphere is divisible into enormous regions called as biomes. So the terrestrial part of biosphere is divisible into enormous regions. These are called as biomes, which are classified by climate, vegetation, animal life and general soil type. No two biomes are alike. Very important that no two biomes are alike. The climate determines the boundaries of biomes. Very important that climate determines the boundaries of the biome and abundance of plants and animals found in each of them. So climate decide करेगा the boundaries of biomes and plants and animals कितना रहेगा, ये climate decide करता है. The most important climatic factor are temperature and precipitation. So here the first biome is tundra. Tundra found in northern and southernmost region of the world adjoining ice-bound poles. ठीक है? So tundra is found in northern and southernmost region of the world adjoining ice-bound poles. Flora and fauna exist in tundra are devoid of trees. That is, trees are not found here except slanted shrubs. In the southern part of tundra biome, ground flora includes lichen, mosses and sedges. The typical animal are reindeer, Arctic fox, polar bear, snowy owl, lemming, Arctic hare and ptarmigan. Reptiles and amphibians are almost absent. Very important that in tundra, reptiles and amphibians are almost absent. Next is taiga. Taiga found in Northern Europe, Asia, North America. Northern Europe, Asia and North America. Moderate temperature than tundra. Tundra is very cold, but taiga is moderate temperature than tundra. Also known as boreal forest. Taiga is known as the boreal forest. The dominating vegetation is coniferous evergreen, mostly spruce with some pine and firs. So the dominating vegetation is coniferous evergreen, mostly spruce with some pine and firs. The fauna consists of birds, hawk, fur-bearing carnivorous, little mink, elks, puma, Siberian tiger, wolverine and wolves. Now next, temperate deciduous forest. So extend over central and southern Europe, eastern northern America, western China, Japan, New Zealand, etc. Moderate average temperature and abundant rainfall. Temperate deciduous forests include the moderate average temperature and abundant rainfall. The flora includes trees like beech, oak, maple, cherry. So temperate deciduous forest, the flora include beech, oak, maple, cherry. Most animals are familiar with vertebrates and invertebrates. These are generally the most productive agricultural areas of the earth. Now tropical rainforest. So tropical areas in equatorial region which is abound with life, temperature and rainfall high. So tropical rainforest means tropical areas in the equatorial region, which is abundant with life, temperature and rainfall high. Tropical rainforest covers about 7% of the earth's surface and 40% of the world's plants and animal species. ठीक है, tropical rainforest covers about 7% of the earth's surface and 40% of the world's plant and animal species. Multiple story of broad-leaved evergreen tree species are in abundance. So multiple story of broad-leaved evergreen tree species are in abundance. Most animals and epiphytic plants are concentrated in canopy or treetop zone. Okay, so tropical rainforest, tropical areas in equatorial region. Equatorial region we know that हर साल मतलब साल में हर टाइम में बारिश होता है. So tropical areas in the equatorial region which is abundant with life, temperature and rainfall both are high. Tropical rainforest covers about 7% of Earth's surface, 40% of the world's planet and animal species. World's plant and animal species. Multiple story of broad-leaved evergreen tree species are in abundance. Okay, so broad-leaved evergreen tree species are in abundance. Most animals are epiphytic plants are concentrated in canopy or treetop zones. Now moving forward to the savanna. So savanna is tropical region. Savanna is the most extensive in Africa. ठीक है, so Africa में savanna is the most extensive. Now the flora and fauna. The grasses with scattered trees and fire resisting thorny shrubs. Okay, grasses with scattered trees and fire resisting thorny shrubs. The fauna include a great diversity of grazers and browsers such as antelopes, buffaloes, zebras, elephants, rhinoceros. The carnivores include lion, cheetah, hyena, mongoose and many rodents. So the savanna is found in tropical region, most extensive in Africa. Grasses with scattered trees, fire resisting thorny shrubs. The fauna include great diversity of grazers and browsers such as antelopes, buffaloes, zebras, elephants, rhinoceros, and the carnivore includes lion, cheetah, hyena and mongoose, etc. Now grassland. So grassland is found in North America, Ukraine, etc. Temperate condition with low rainfall. Temperate condition with low rainfall. Grasses dominate the vegetation. The fauna include large herbivores like bison, antelope, cattle, rodents, prairie dog, wolves, and a rich diverse array of ground nesting bird. ठीक है? So the grassland is found in North America, Ukraine, and temperate condition with low rainfall. Temperate condition with low rainfall. Grasses dominate the vegetation. The fauna include large herbivores like bison, antelope, cattle, rodents, prairie dogs, wolves, and a rich diverse array of ground nesting birds. Now the desert. So continental interiors with very low and sporadic rainfall with low humidity. The days are very hot but nights are very cold. We know that in desert the days are very hot and the nights are very cold. The continental interiors with very low and sporadic rainfall with low humidity. The flora is drought resistance such as cactus, euphorbias, sagebrush, and fauna are reptiles, small mammals and birds. Now moving towards the aquatic zone. So we read the terrestrial zone. Now aquatic zone. So aquatic systems are not called biomes. Very important. Aquatic systems are not called biomes. However, they are divided into distinct life zones with regions of relatively distinct plant and animal lives. The major difference between the various aquatic zones are due to salinity, levels of dissolved nutrients, water temperature, depth of sunlight penetration. So first, aquatic systems are not called as biome. However, they are divided into distinct life zones with regions of relatively distinct plant and animal life. The major difference between the various aquatic zones are due to salinity, levels of dissolved nutrients, water temperature, and depth of sunlight penetration. So first is freshwater ecosystem. So in freshwater ecosystem are characterized as lotic, that is moving water, and lentic, still or stagnant water. Okay, so freshwater ecosystem are classified as lotic. Lotic means moving water, and lentic. Lentic means the still or stagnant water. Lotic water system includes freshwater streams, springs, rivulets, creeks, brooks, and rivers. So lotic is moving water. Moving water consists of streams, spring, rivulet, creeks, brooks, and rivers. And lentic. Lentic means still and stagnant water. Lentic water bodies include pools, ponds, some swamps, bogs, and lakes. They vary considerably in physical and chemical and biological characteristics. Next is marine ecosystem. So nearly 3/4 of Earth's surface is covered by ocean with an average depth of 3,750 meter and with salinity is 35 ppt, that is parts per thousand, about 90% of which sodium chloride. So nearly 3/4 of Earth's surface is covered by ocean with an average depth of 3,750 meter and salinity is 35 ppt, that is parts per thousand, about 90% of which is sodium chloride. Next is the estuaries. Now coastal bays, river mouths, and tidal marshes form the estuaries. So coastal bays, river mouths, and tidal marshes form the estuaries. In estuaries, fresh water from the rivers meets ocean water. Okay, so in estuaries, fresh water from the rivers meet the ocean water, and two are mixed by action of tides, and fresh water and the river water mixed by action of tides. Estuaries are highly productive as compared to adjacent river or sea. So coastal bays, river mouths are the estuaries. Coastal bays, river mouths, and tidal marshes form the estuaries. In estuary, fresh water from river meet ocean water, and the two, that is river water and ocean water, are mixed by action of tides. Estuaries are highly productive as compared to adjacent river or sea. Now moving towards the biosphere. In next chapter we will discuss about the coral reef and mangrove. So biosphere is a part of earth where life can exist. Okay, so biosphere is a part of earth where life can exist. Biosphere represent a highly integrated and interacting zone comprising atmosphere, hydrosphere, and lithosphere. Very important that biosphere comprises atmosphere, air, hydrosphere is water, and lithosphere is land. So here you can see that the atmosphere, lithosphere, and biosphere and hydrosphere, and the combination of both is called as biosphere. Okay? So it is a narrow layer around the surface of the earth. Okay? Biosphere is a narrow layer around the surface of the earth. If we visualize the earth to be the size of an apple, the biosphere would be as thick as its skin. So biosphere is the skin of the apple and apple is the earth. Okay? So life in the biosphere is abundant between 200 meters, that is 660 feet, below the surface of the ocean, about 6,000 meters, that is 20,000 feet above the sea level. So life in biosphere is abundant between 200 meters below the surface of ocean. Ocean के नीचे 200 meters tak, that is 660 feet, and above the 6000 meters, that is 20,000 feet above the sea level. Now, biosphere is absent at extreme north or south pole because these regions are so cold and no life exists there. So, biosphere is absent at extreme north and south pole. The highest mountains, the deepest ocean, since the existing hostile condition there do not support life. So, if there are hostile condition that do not support the life system, then there is no life and biosphere is absent. So, occasionally spores of fungi and bacteria do not occur at the great height beyond 8,000 meters, but they are not metabolically active, hence represent only dormant life. So, occasionally spores of fungi and bacteria do occur at great height beyond 8,000 meters, but they are not metabolically active, hence represent only dormant life. The energy required for the life within the biosphere comes from the sun. The nutrients necessary for living organism come from the air, water and soil. The same chemicals are recycled over and over again for life to continue. Living organisms are not uniformly distributed throughout the biosphere. Very important that living organisms are not uniformly distributed throughout the biosphere. Only a few organisms live in the polar region, while tropical rainforests have an exactly rich diversity of plants and animals, that is 50% of global biodiversity. Now, do you know that Environmental Information System, that is ENVIS, a central sector scheme of the ministry, has been implemented since 1982. The purpose of the scheme is to integrate countrywide efforts in environmental information collection, collation, storage, retrieval and dissemination through ENVIS websites, which are dedicated to different interesting themes. Thank you for watching. In next video, I will cover the second chapter. Thank you.